Welcome in everybody to another lesson. Today we are going to do a bit of basic math review. In fact, the next several lessons will be. So, one, I apologize for that, but two, it is absolutely necessary because once we get to Algebra 1, which comes after this, all review of basic math ceases. It stops. So, and as I said in the beginning, the goal of pre-algebra is to bridge the gap between basic math and new concepts and get you into Algebra 1. So it is necessary. So today we're going to talk about absolute values and integers. So, of course, in review here, we have our number line, right? We have a number line, you have 0 in the center. To the right of that, you have positive numbers. To the left of 0, you have negative numbers. So, if we remember from basic math 1 and 2, we talked about whole number, natural numbers, which are your counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. Your whole numbers are the set of natural numbers plus 0. You could think of it like a whole, 0. Your integers contain all those plus negative numbers. So we are incorporating negative numbers into this also. So something else too, of course, when you're dealing with positive numbers, the bigger the number is, well, the bigger the number is. But in negative numbers, when you go to the left and get into negative numbers, the bigger the number, the lesser it actually is. So it's a little bit of reverse psychology if we remember from basic math. So let's start here with some inequalities. Let's do some inequalities first. Let's say we have -6 and then -2. Is -6 going to be greater than or less than -2? Well, if it were just 6 and 2, well, 6 would be bigger than 2, but since these are negative numbers, the bigger the number is, the lesser it actually is. So -6 is actually less than -2 because it's getting smaller. It's as you increase in the negatives, the smaller the number gets. So -6 is less than -2. All right. How about -10 and then -13? Well, again, these are both negative numbers. It's reverse psychology. So remember, the bigger the number gets in negative, the lesser it actually gets. So in this case, -10 is greater than -13. You'll actually have -10 is greater than -13. Alright, then we have 0 and -9. Well, this is easy because 0 is greater than any negative number any day of the week. So 0 is definitely greater than -9. That's a dead giveaway. Then we have 14. We have positive 14 and 0. Well, of course, as you know, a positive number is greater than 0. So that's a dead giveaway. 14 is greater than 0. Now we have -18 and +8. Well, a negative number is always less than a positive number, so -18 is less than 8. That should be a dead giveaway too. A negative number is always going to be less than a positive number. So I think you get the idea that the negative numbers, it's reverse psychology. The bigger the number, the smaller it actually is. Now we also have a set of integers here. we have a set of integers here, right? We have 5, 0, and 8. The goal of this, you want to write them from least to greatest. So if we rewrite this set of integers from the smallest to the greatest, of course 0 would be the smallest number, then you'd have 5, then you'd have 8. So rewriting this set of integers from smallest to greatest, it would be 0, 5, then 8. Because 0 is your smallest, then 5, then 8. So pretty good setup there. Here's a good one. We got negative 15, negative 1, negative 2, and negative 4. So write these integers from smallest to greatest. Well, the smallest number, since we're dealing with all negatives, would be negative 15. You get negative 15 first. And then your next smallest would be negative 4. Then it would be negative 2. Then your greatest in this would be negative 1. Because when it's negative, you go backwards. You work backwards with negative numbers. So smallest is negative 15, then negative 4, then negative 2, then negative 1 for your greatest. So it's about knowing your order with negative numbers. It's all about knowing its reverse psychology with negative numbers. Let's do a mixed set here. I like this one a lot. I do. Let's see here. We have a set of 24, 5, negative 46, 9, 0, and negative 3. So we have a big set of numbers here. We have the set of 24, 5, negative 46, 9, 0, negative 3. We want to write it from smallest to greatest. Well, what's going to help you out here there are two negative numbers. The rest are either 0 or positive. So start with your negative numbers first. Negative 46 would definitely be your smallest. Let's write in a different color since we're doing the answer. Negative 46 would definitely be your smallest. And then you have the next negative number, which would be negative 3. Alright, that's it for the negatives. Then you got 0. Alright, and then you got 3 positives. You have 5, 9, and 24, which next number would be 5, then 9, and then 24. You'd have positive 24. So from smallest to greatest, you have negative 46, negative 3, 0, 5, 9, and 24. So if you're ever asked to write a set in order from smallest to greatest, just know you probably want to start with your negatives first, and then you work from that into 0 and positive. So that's really all there is to it if you're asked to write a set of numbers from smallest to greatest. Alright. Let's do some brief review of absolute values. So, towards the end of Basic Math 2, we did absolute values. So we have the absolute value of negative 15. The key thing to remember is, inside the absolute value, whether it's positive or negative, you will always get a positive result. So the absolute value of negative 15 is positive 15. Whether it's positive or negative inside the absolute value, you will get a positive. Alright, let's see. Let's do the absolute value of 46. the absolute value of positive 46. Well, remember, whether it's positive or negative inside the absolute value, the answer is positive. You will get 46. That would be your absolute value. Now, let's see here. Say I did something like this. I have the negative of the absolute value of 20. Well, of course, the negative hangs outside of the absolute value, so what you're going to want to do is keep the negative, and then in parentheses, that is the absolute value of 20. The absolute value of 20 is 20. So the negative of 20, well, that's just going to be negative 20. So if you have a negative sign outside the absolute value, if it's outside, that makes your result negative. All right. Let's do an equation here. Let's say you have negative of the absolute value of negative 6 plus 1 minus the absolute value of 5 minus 6. Well, of course, the absolute values always act like parentheses. They basically act like parentheses for all intents and purposes. So what you'd want to do, leave the negative sign alone for a second, work inside of your absolute value. We have negative 6 plus 1. Well, in order to do that, of course, we have to know how to add a negative and a positive, which in this case we know negative 6 plus 1, that's negative 5. And then we have minus, in the absolute value we have 5 minus 6, that's going to be what? Negative 1. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. So then we would just, of course, take the absolute value. You would get, leave the negative outside. The absolute value of negative 5 is, well, 5. Minus, what's the absolute value of negative 1? Well, that's just going to be 1. So now that parenthesis, that times the 5, that negative times 5, well, it becomes negative 5 minus 1. Negative 5 minus 1, well, that's just going to be negative 6. So your answer is negative 6. So there is, that's how you would solve an absolute value equation. You treat the absolute values like you would parentheses. All right, let's do a little bit of variables with these. Always got to have some variables, right? Let's see. Evaluate the expression if A equals 0, B equals 3, and C equals negative 4. All right. So we're about to have some expressions here, and they tell you what those variables are. So the first one is going to be, first one here is 14 plus the absolute value of b. 14 plus the absolute value of b. Well, what you're going to do, we see b equals 3. You're going to take that 3, stick it in where b is. You'll get 14 plus the absolute value of 3. Well, again, the absolute value acts like a parenthesis. So find the absolute value of 3, it would just be 3. So you'd have 14 plus 3, which should give you 17. You would get 17 for your answer. So just substituting in wherever you see that variable, you substitute the number it's equal to for it. Okay. I got some more. We have the absolute value of c minus a. The absolute value of c minus a. Well, c is equal to negative 4, so what you're going to do here is you're going to substitute negative 4 in for c, which would give you the absolute value of negative 4 minus a. Well, a is 0. Okay, well, the absolute value of negative 4, that's positive 4. You'll have 4 minus 0. Well, any number minus 0 is itself. So the answer you would get is 4. If you substitute that in, you would just get 4. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, okay, let's see here. I have a plus b plus the absolute value of c. So you got all three variables being used here. You have a plus b plus the absolute value of c. Once again, for each of these, substitute whatever that value is for those variables. A is 0, you'll substitute that in, plus b is 3, plus the absolute value of c, which is the absolute value of negative 4. Alright, well, the absolute value of negative 4 acts like parentheses, so you'll have 0 plus 3 plus, what's the absolute value of negative 4? That's positive 4. So now you have a simple addition problem. 0 plus 3 plus 4. Well, 0 plus 3 is 3. You'll be left with 3 plus 4, which 3 plus 4 is 7. So you would get 7. Alright? So just substituting these values in for these variables. Let's find something a little harder. I got a couple more of these. Let's say we have AB plus the absolute value of negative 40. So we have AB plus the absolute value of negative 40. Well, what we know here, AB means A times B. So substitute these in here. Substitute the values of those variables in for their places. So A is 0, B is 3, so you'll have 0 times 3 plus the absolute value of negative 40. Okay? Well, 0 times any number is 0. So you'll end up having 0 plus the absolute value of negative 40. Well, that's just 40. So 0 plus any number is that number, so it would be 40. That would be your answer, would be positive 40. Pretty simple stuff. Alright, I think we kind of get what to do now with absolute values and integers. So the very next lesson, we're going to go over adding and subtracting integers. I'm going to kind of combine two sections into one, because my goal is, yes, to cover this and review it, but I don't want to spend an awful lot of time like fully reteaching it. I think we need to review it, but I'm not going to fully reteach this. So look for that in the next lesson here. We're going to add and subtract integers, and that'll be it. So I hope everybody has a good day. Take care.